What's going on, everybody? Hey, this is Colton Woods, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Learning from the Experts. And once again, I have a freaking awesome expert on here today that I'm excited for you guys to get to know and hear his story and learn some freaking sick stuff from. So let's go ahead and get started. So here's the deal. I know how frustrating it is to waste countless hours sifting through wannabe experts who never actually help you in the end. Then to learn years later that there was a real expert who could have helped you 100 times faster than learning it on your own. I have created this podcast to save you time and money while taking you on a journey with me as I learn from real experts who can actually help you grow your business. My name is Colton Woods, and you're listening to Learning from the Experts. Awesome, Josh. Hey, I'm excited to have you on here. I have Josh Forti on here with me today.
Colton, man, I appreciate you having me on here, dude. It's an honor, and I'm excited to get rocking and rolling. How far back should we go? Where do you want to start?
Dude, you know what? Let's just kind of hear, how did you get started? Let's hear that part. What was it like?
Started into the social media game?
Yeah.
All right, we'll back up to the origin story. So guys, my name is Josh Forti. Colton, once again, thanks for having me on. We'll start from the beginning. Born in Wisconsin, at age 1, moved to LA, lived in the suburbs of LA for 10 years, and then moved out to this little itty bitty farm town in the middle of nowhere of Indiana. So culture shock, right? 12 years old. From there, grew up on a farm and had like no social media experience at all. Like I had dial-up internet. I didn't have like texting or internet on my phone until I was like 20. So really out in the middle of nowhere. And so I went and, I'm a farmer and had a bad year in the farm community. I was planning on being a farmer my whole life. That was like my goal, my mentality. And I had a bad year in that and was like, dude, I got to go do something else. Like if I didn't realize the risk that was involved there. So I wanted something a little bit more. Started college for a semester, absolutely hated it. So while in college, I got a job in insurance sales, and kind of the reason I was able to get that job was, hey, you're in college, you're going to finish it. Well, I was arguing with my professor one day, and he was like, you're here because you want to be successful. And I'm like, oh no, that's not why I'm here. Like you don't need college to be successful. And he goes, well, why the heck are you here? And I'm like, well, that's a good point. And so literally right there, I got up, stood up, and said I quit, and walked out of the bursar's office, quit my classes, and left. And so when my boss finds out like 3 or 4 days later, she's like, you've got 3 months to figure out what you're going to do, and either like start something else, right? Like go get another, sign up for more classes or figure out what you're going to do with your life basically, or else you're done. And so I'm like, all right, well, got to figure something out. And so I'm pretty broke at this time, and I'm looking around and I'm like, all right, how do I make money? And so we're sitting there, we're in the insurance space. So she's got some pretty big clients, and we're at this sitting in the office of a CEO of like a huge company. I mean, they probably, I don't know, over $100-200 million a year at least. I mean, they got factories all over the world, right? And so he's like, sales are down and stuff, even though the demand for our stuff is at an all-time high. And I'm like, well, why is that the case then? And he's like, well, he just kept saying, all the sales are coming in online, and they weren't like there. They weren't in that online space. This is like 2 years ago. And I'm like, well, have you like tried like running ads or like being online or being on social media? And he's like, no, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it's something along the lines of like, that doesn't work, or like influencers, that something is a fad or something like that. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm broke, and you're telling me that people are making money online, right? So I go home and I just start Googling it. And I'm like, how do I go? How do I make money? How do I make money? How do I make money? And long story short.
How old are you at this point?
21, 22. I'm 24 now, almost 20. So probably 22. Trying to think, maybe this was right before my 22nd birthday, I think maybe.
Oh, sweet.
And so I'm like Googling, and I'm like, how do I do this? And so like, driving for Uber comes up, and I'm like, okay, that's not online, but okay, I get it. Like flipping stuff on eBay and Craigslist and stuff. I'm like, all right. And so I start doing that, just like looking around. And then I find Facebook ads, and I find e-com. And I'm like, watch this. I'm sure it was a webinar of some sort. And they're like, if you just do this and this. And I'm like, yeah. So I like jump in, and I actually had to put it on a credit card because I didn't have any money. And I spent like it was like $800 on setting up a website, an e-com website. Had someone do it because I had no idea, and like $500 or $600 on Facebook ads. and I didn't make any sales. I tried to sell Harry Potter books because that was the only thing. I was like, my friends all like Harry Potter, so maybe they'll buy it. And like,
That's
nothing.
awesome, dude.
I know. So I'm like broke now at this point, and now I'm in debt, and I've never been in debt before my whole life at this point. And so I'm like freaking out. And so I'm, still trying to pay this off by flipping stuff on Craigslist because I was driving for Uber and all that stuff there. And then one day I meet this kid on Instagram. He's like 16 years old. He's got 50,000 followers. And I'm like, is this guy famous, right? So I go and I literally Google his name. And I'm like trying to figure out if he's got rich parents or if he's famous. I can't find him anywhere. And so I just messaged him and I had 3 questions for him. I was like, number 1, are you famous somewhere else? Number 2, are you making money? And number 3, if so, how? Right? And he's like, he messages me back, and I can't for the life of me remember who the kid was. And I wish I would have been down, but at the time I wasn't in entrepreneurship, so I didn't know that's what you did, right? Yeah. But I remember him telling me, he's like, I post cool stories about like stuff that I do. People tell me what they want me to sell them. I go and I sell it to them, and they buy it. And I'm like, there is no way it's that easy, right? Like, dude, like how? And so I'm like thinking about this. And then I had this like light bulb moment. And so I messaged him back because I knew I'd probably only get like one more question into him before he'd like ignore me. And then I'm annoying Instagrammer. Yeah. And I was like, dude, do you pay for ads? And he's like, no, dude, they just tell me what they want. And I'm like, light bulb moment. This is amazing, right? I'm like, you don't have to have, like, how do you grow without paying for ads? You're not paying for your followers. They're all real. And so that was like a big light bulb moment for me because I'm broke at the time. And, I don't know where you, the listener, are right now, if you're, are broke or maybe just started out, but like the thought for me and a lot of people that I run into is like, the thought that me and a lot of people run into is like the thought of running ads is scary. Right. And it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get an ROI on that money. And so I was like, if I can grow an audience and figure out how to grow an audience without having to pay for ads, like that's game over for me. Like I'm all in. And so I started looking around and I ended up buying a course. Once again, didn't have the money for it. Only had like half of it, but I put it on a credit card and I was like, all right, I'm all in. And it was an Instagram course. And I don't want to bash on the course. It was a good course. I think it was thorough in what it taught, but it wasn't anything like exceptional. And I think a lot of people think like if it's not an exceptional or amazing course or whatever, it's not worth their money. The thought that like you have to have like this big drawn out course that needs to be super awesome in order to get results, that's like not true. Like this course was average, mediocre, but it was thorough. And so I just did everything the course said. So I bought it on a Friday and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this from Friday when I get off work till like Monday when I go back. I'm going to go through this whole course. That's exactly what I did. And so I started doing literally everything that the course said. And I want to say, and this kind of more like on the mindset issue side of things, my parents always taught me how to work hard. And like my parents were not like, don't have money, and I don't come from like a wealthy family or whatever, not money savvy, but like you grew up on a farm, you know how to work hard. Right. And so I was like, I am not going to quit, and I'm going to find new ways to make this better. And I'm going to like get my money back out of this because I've got to make my money back. And so I did everything that it said and then some. And I tested different things and I opened several different accounts and I tried it. And it took me months to actually see results out of it. But fast forward 7 months, and at 7 months later, I had, I don't know, 80 or 100,000 followers on Instagram.
Dang, dude.
Just off of just doing it consistently. And like for the first like 2 or 3 or 4 months, so many people, they like give up. And I'm like, dude, like I spent all my money and went into debt over this, and I didn't see any results for 3 months. But I followed through and I finally figured out how it clicked. And so that's like what started me into this whole social media game was Instagram and some 16-year-old kid that said, I don't pay for ads and I make money. And I'm like, yeah. And that's what's led into now. And I'm sure we'll get into that, but like about 5 million followers that we've grown for myself, for clients on social media between Instagram and Facebook.
Dang, dude, that's freaking awesome. That's actually super impressive if you ask me. One thing I've kind of noticed too is like you say you came from like a farming background.
Yeah.
First off, that's freaking sweet because you weren't just given like a phone when you were 12 and like here's social media and this is how you do it, and like you've been growing it since then. I mean, you've only been in this game for what, 4 years now?
No, not even. 3 years. 3 years tops. Yeah. It's what's it now? October. So I probably about 3 years ago is when I started Googling this whole thing.
Really?
Googling it. Yeah. And then I remember, it's probably when I started Googling, October, November. And then, cause I would have quit that's when I went to quit classes. It would have been around this time. And then I started on Instagram March 1st or March 2nd, 2 years ago. And then, so it'll be coming up on 3 years. This coming March is when I started on Instagram.
Man, see, that's just, to me, that's incredible, dude. But I think what the key to that is, you didn't stop. Like most people, they don't see the ROI in it in like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And they're like, this is not happening. I'm done. Right when they're like at the edge of just hitting the gold mine, you know? And so I think that's a huge lesson for us to learn as well, is like, you just got to keep pushing through it and then it'll happen.
Yeah. And the other thing, along, if I could just stop you right there on the side of that, just because a week or a month or a year has gone by means literally nothing if you're not actually working. Because like I have people that bought into the same course and they're like, well, I've been trying for 6 months too. And I'm only at, 6,000 followers. How are you at 80,000? And I'm like, because I worked a job where I worked 9 hours a day and I had a 30-minute commute each way, roughly 20 to 30 minutes, right? So I'm like, there's 10 hours of my day that's gone. I had to be there at 8 a.m. So I would wake up an hour and a half before I had to leave. And for an hour, I would work on Instagram. My entire lunch break was Instagram. My entire time after that. And I had a girlfriend at the time. Like people were like, oh, family, stuff like that. I'm like, I mean, I had it too. I wasn't married, but like, during that whole time, like it was constant. It was always, I didn't go to movies. I didn't go hang out with friends. I didn't go to parties. I didn't go to events. I went to church. I went to work. I went to Walmart, and that's it. And when you do that, it's like people are like, well, I have this. I'm like, dude, 2 years, right? 2-3 years of your life you sacrifice for a lifetime of, whatever that is. And I know Russell talks about that a lot too. So.
No, yeah, it's totally true. And I know I've even talked about like when I started my repair business on the podcast, and I've told you a little bit about it. But I started out, dude, it was just a little here, a little there, not much. And then a year later, I literally have a brick and mortar and I'm like just busier than I could be, but I stuck with it, I just kept it going, pushed it out more and more. So, and then the other thing I want to point out is I feel like I've noticed this trend of like, I don't know if it's the farm thing or what, but a lot of just killers out there, I feel like they grew up and their parents just made them work. Like, and so they've learned how to work. But with that being said, I was like, my dad had me outside working. I learned how to work outside, but not only that, like I learned how to enjoy my work, even though most people hated it. Like, I'm sure you learned the same thing, like farming, it sucks when you're a kid, right?
There's nothing like baling hay, dude.
Dude, yeah.
Like, it is 100 degrees outside. The heat is blaring down on you. And then after your dog tired, you got to go into the hayloft and you got to put it all into the barn, and it's hot. There's no air. You can't breathe. It is the worst. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So yeah, you learned some hard work, but that, I feel like for me, it didn't translate too much into like the online work. Like I had a really hard time with that at the beginning.
Interesting.
And then I went to college and I feel like that actually opened up my eyes that I could actually accomplish more things than I realized. And I'm sure you probably realized that even with like the one semester that you went to, like, hey, I can actually do all this stuff and still
I think the biggest thing that I learned from college, or that I was made aware of, is that, and I think I learned it after I went, but like going to that one semester is that there's actually monetary value in the information that's in your head. Right. So like, I was like, dude, I don't get it. Like I can stand up and teach this stupid class too. Right. But like afterwards I would go and I look back at that and I go, I understand now, like that there is monetary value in this stuff. And I learned that through business, but I will say that there's certain elements of the college experience. I went to a community college. It wasn't an experience, but like the college dorm room there, or a classroom there, that I would say, it was definitely valuable in that mental transition process for sure.
That's interesting. That's cool stuff, dude. Well, hey, I want to ask you some more questions here.
Let's do it.
Tell me, all right, just so I feel like we've kind of gone through it a little bit. We know that you were not just given this. It wasn't just a silver platter. Here you go. What are some of the hard things that you went through? What are some like the things that people go through as they become someone like you, or they build their business like you did?
So the first little roadblock that everybody runs into, I think, and I feel like less people run into it now, just because more people are in the online space and like people that are serious in this kind of like get into it. But if you're like a complete newbie, like I was, like have no online friends, for sure you're going to run into this, is nobody watches you at the beginning.
Right.
Like no one. And I did a webinar yesterday. I actually showed a screenshot. Like I used to try to publish on YouTube, right? And so when I first got started, like I had no money. So I was like literally taking the lampshades off of lights and setting them up on either side to try to get better lighting. It was awful. But like I got 4 views. The first Facebook group I ever launched in the first month got 3 members. All right. Like nobody cares. And so I think that at the beginning was really difficult. I thankfully just like to talk. And so I'm like, well, if nobody listens to me, dang it, I will listen to me. You know what I mean? When I put my voice out there. And so I think that was really, really difficult for me. Like, and I think it's difficult for a lot because when you see that the person you're following is getting 1,000 views and you're getting 62, like that's a really big mental block. And so I think that was more of like an overall difficult thing. And then once I got into it, dude, I'll tell you the worst day of my life. I'm telling you the worst day, and I've been through some crap in my life, but something I would not like ever want to go back to. December, I think it was 29th, 2016. So this was like coming up on 2 years ago.
Yeah, not very long ago.
Not too long ago. My first webinar ever. And we hired a guy, paid him, the package was $25,000. And I didn't have the $25,000 at the time. So we took out a payment plan on it and put down $15,000 up front. It was all the money I had. I think my business partner and I combined, mind you, we're both like, I'm paying for an apartment. I don't have a job at this point. Like I think combined we had like $2,000 in our bank account. So we put down every penny of this for it to help this guy help us build our webinar. And we were convinced that we had a good course. It was on Instagram. We had grown probably over 1 million, 2 million followers probably at this time. So like we knew what we were doing. And we told him, we're going to get a ton of followers a ton of people registered for this webinar. And he didn't believe us. And I was like, no, dude, you don't understand. Like we have a lot of followers on Instagram. Like we will push traffic. And so we went through and we worked as hard as we knew how. And when I talk a lot about this, like in my group, I talk about learning how to learn. Like I didn't know how to learn at this point. I didn't know how to receive that level of information, but I was giving it my all. And this guy should have told us up front that we were not the right fit, that he didn't want our money. Like he should have said no. It was clearly obvious that we were not a good fit. But we went through. And so we built this webinar. 2,700 people registered, 0 ad spend. All right.
0 ad spend.
0 ad spend. So like this was a warm audience from Instagram. So it's not truly warm, but it's a warm audience. 1,000 people showed up for the webinar. Actually 1,004. We maxed out the room. People couldn't get in.
Damn.
900, I think it was like 930 or something on at pitch.
What?
1 sale.
1 sale.
300. Actually, I don't know the exact number, but hundreds of emails. F you, go to hell. You're never going to be successful. You're a scam artist. This was the worst webinar ever. Can I get an hour of my life back? Like you should pay me to do like I'm talking like guys, the lowest of lows. Like I would pay $100,000 to not have to go back to that day. Right. Like it was that bad. And so like going through that mental process, bawling. I mean, I bawled myself to sleep that night. Cause we worked so hard and I was like, I owe $15,000 to this guy now. Right. I put down 15. Now I owe him 15. That was supposed to come from this webinar. Only made 1 sale. And now everybody hates me. And so at that point, like when you're in that moment, like that's a defining moment for people's lives. And so when people are like, Josh, like, it's easy for you to do blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. The misconception that it's easier when you have an audience, and I don't want to scare anybody away from like trying to build an audience. It's the most amazing thing ever. The amount of lives you can change. But everything you do is in the spotlight when you're in the audience, especially in business. And so like that defining moment, the next day I wrote a very long email and I did a live stream apologizing to everyone there. And I said, look, guys, I'm really, really good at social media and I know what I'm talking about. Clearly, I don't know what the heck I'm doing on webinars and I'm sorry, right? And so we offered a follow-up training with no pitch for free, just sat on there for an hour. We just broke down like background strategies or whatever. And we turned that into a good scenario in the sense of we gained a lot of respect from the people that actually followed us, but everybody else hated us. Like, I mean, really, truly hated me at that given point. And so when I see people like the Logan Paul and like his controversy with like millions, I can't imagine what that guy's going through, right? Like mentally. And so that was like the worst day of my life. up until that point, and still to this day, like in business, it's just awful. And so that was a mental game right there, big time.
Man, that is huge. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's just something that people actually need to see and hear, because it's so true.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it's, as long as you just keep going and you push through it. There's a guy named Hiram Smith that I listened to from Franklin Covey, actually one of the, I think he was an owner in Franklin Covey. He said, pain is inevitable, misery is optional.
Yep.
And I'm like, I totally agree with that. Like you guys can, like, you could have just taken that day and blamed that guy for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And never done anything else and lived out, just ended up getting a 9 to 5 and not, not growing an audience after that because you feel like you failed, or you pushed through it just like you did and you made it happen. Like, I think that's awesome, dude.
And I think the other thing with failure, that lesson specifically, and I love what you said there about blaming that guy, because that's your initial reaction. Believe me, like the first thing that I did the next morning is I got on the Vox with that guy and I said, here's what happened. We got issues, right?
Yep.
But not blaming that person and turning that into a learning experience. Like that experience has, don't get me wrong, mentally, a lot of good, but mentally it has messed me up for like future webinars and stuff. Like it really did.
Oh yeah.
Like even I did a webinar just yesterday. Dude, like you hit that go live button and you are, you're in terror, right? Yep. And you're freaking out. And then when you hit done, you're in terror because you're like, is my inbox about to explode? Am I about to make no money? You know what I mean? And thankfully that didn't happen, right? But like,
that emotion.
That's the really thing. But you learn from that experience and you have to go through and you're like, you look at that and go, how do I don't want to say forgive, but how do I go to and like let that experience go and not hold a grudge to that person and really learn from it and truly become that person. And if you only look at it from a financial standpoint and you only look at it from a business standpoint, you're going to have a really hard time with it.
Oh yeah,
when
totally.
you look at it from a life standpoint, when you look at it from a, wow, look what I learned from a non-financial standpoint, it makes it a lot easier. And like you said, you don't have to be in misery over it then at that point.
Yep. I've been through a couple situations. I can think of one that was just, I could have really held a grudge against that person for doing what they did. And pretty much screwed me over on my entire business. Like but I look at it now and I'm like, man, I learned a ton from that. And I'm glad I actually went through it then instead of later on. So yeah, totally. Just learn from those experiences. Good stuff. Well, shoot, let's get into social media a little bit more. All right, tell us some stuff. I want some gold here, like some truth nukes. Like,
some truth nukes. All right. So
if you're trying to grow the social media, let's hear it, man. Let's go.
All right. So guys, what you have to understand from a pure growth standpoint on social media, there are literally only two things that matter. And I know people are like, what are the 3 secrets? What is you're probably looking for me to drop some hacks, and like, we can get into that. I'm happy to do that. But excuse me. If you listen to Russell Brunson about funnels and, he talks about the different elements of what makes a successful funnel on social media, regardless of the platform, regardless of the message, whatever, there's only 2 things that matter. And that number 1 is the story and how you deliver that story, like the content piece of it. And number 2 is exposure. All right. Like those are the 2 things you're going for. And so what you have to look at from a core element is, if you don't know what your message is / what your story is, then you can't get exposure on that story, right? And so the hashtags you use, a Facebook ad you run, the interviews that you do, all that is getting the exposure to your message. And so once you have that exposure, we've gotten, people that have had, have told the message, they'll get thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of views on their Instagram profile or their Facebook page or whatever, and nobody will follow. And then you've gotten people that have gotten like 10,000 views on their Facebook page or Instagram page, and like half of those people turn into followers. What's the difference? The difference is your content and your storyline behind it. You've got to give people a reason to follow you. And the only reason that makes you different or unique than anyone else is your story. And so when you have that story, and I do a lot more of personal branding. I work with, personal brands, people that want to grow an audience.
Right.
If you're not doing a personal brand, then there's a storyline behind whatever it is that you are trying to grow. Look at Nike, look at, Maverick by Logan Paul, look at these, big, huge e-com stores, the ones that make it are the ones that have a storyline and the ones that really build that brand around it. So I would say like those two things are the things that you need to focus on, and everything that you teach and everything that you learn, it only applies back to one of those. You're either getting more exposure, and I'm talking purely from a growth standpoint, not a monetization standpoint, but like from a growth standpoint, it either ties back to your message and story, or it ties back to the amount of exposure that you're going to get. One of those two.
And what do you think would happen if you kind of went off from your story into like a different area? Like, what if you broke from what you normally teach, what you do? I just had that thought come into my head. Like, if someone's got this story or this following, and this is kind of like what they're teaching, and this is what they're in. Like, if Russell Brunson's in funnels, right?
Right.
And he were to go somewhere else, like, what would that do? Do you know?
So I would say one of two things. If you're moving into something else and it's part of your storyline, then you're fine. Right.
Okay. But what if you're not focused on that one, I guess?
Right. Exactly. Now, if you're doing multiple different things, then so figure out something. Why do you, I want to put this in like a storyline format of why do you follow someone, right? You follow someone because number one, like you follow a story because you want to know what happens next. Right. But you follow a specific story because of how you relate to that story.
Mm-hmm.
And so if this story is all over the place, are you really going to follow it? Right? Think about it. Like if I'm telling you a story and I'm like, dude, let me tell you, this one time I was at the beach and all of a sudden we were eating ice cream. And oh, dude, when I was over here on this grass, you'd be like, wait, what happened? What happened to the beach? Right?
Yeah.
Like, well, I'll get back to that here in just a second. But like, dude, this grass, I was mowing this grass over here. You'd be like, what are you doing? You know? And so if you're straying all over the place and you're hopping from this to this, it's really hard for people to know what it is that you're about and the story that they're trying to follow, the messaging that you're doing that. So if you're straying from that, if you're straying from whatever it is and you're jumping from thing to thing, I try not to, and people think they have to have it all figured out right away. You know, right? If you're authentic and you're real and you put forth your passion and your why, and that's why you always lead with why, then you can have different elements of the story and like your core audience will know that you're trying different things, but you've got to have that core message and that core story along what you're doing. And so for me right now, and I was sharing, with you before the podcast, there was a point not too long ago, 6, 7, 8 months ago, when I was about to just dip out. I was done. Right. And the reason, you don't always share that, but the people that you do share that with, they go, okay, well, they understand the process because they know your big vision. And so when you're like, hey, I'm leading with this vision of I want to make the world a better place by providing people with like information that's going to change their life. I'm all about education, right? And so for me right now, the vehicle I'm using is social media. That's what people know me by. But my core audience knows that my vision is to make the world a better place and change the world through education. Like that's what I've told my audience. And so every live stream that I'm signing off on is, go out, think different, make the world a better place, change lives. And so if I were to jump from social media and let's make a shift to PR or make a shift to funnels or whatever that is, and that was my focus, my core audience that's actually going to follow and buy from me, as long as I tell them that storyline process, they're going to know, okay, he's shifting vehicles, but he's still on the same route. But if you just jump and you don't give them context, if you just jump and you don't share that story and you don't lead with that overall vision of what you're doing, then it's impossible for them to know what's going on and they're not going to follow you.
Yeah, totally. I think that helps a ton just to know kind of what to focus on or to be focused on something and run that way. What is it? What was it? Do you know the quote? Like a confused mind is like,
I don't know the quote, but I like how it's starting out.
No, like essentially a confused mind will not buy. Like it's not, it's not going to happen. Like a confused mind will not follow because they don't understand it. Like if it doesn't make sense to them or they don't get that emotional attached to it, then they're not gonna care. Whatever.
So think of it this way, right? Imagine you were following an Instagram account. And this Instagram account was all about sunsets. You loved sunsets. You loved the beach. And I follow one, I think it's actually called @sunsets. And it's beautiful pictures. You're following it for that reason, right? If all of a sudden they went and deleted all that content one day and started posting pictures of themselves,
gone.
Are you going to continue to follow? No, of course not. And I actually had this example. I did that. And I was building an Instagram account. We had, I don't know, probably 100,000 followers or so, 100, 150. And it was a luxury account, like houses and beautiful cars and like things of that nature. And I was like, dude, I want to be famous, right? Because at this point, I hadn't really grown my personal brand. And so I was like, what if I just post some pictures of me up there, right? And so like every now and then I would just throw up a picture. And first off, the engagement's like drops like 90% less, right? Like nobody likes and engages on it. And then the random people that do, they'll be like, the is this, right? Or, who the heck is it? Who are you? Like, why is this on my newsfeed? And they'll literally just comment on it. They don't want it. It's not what they signed up for. And so people, you have to remember that the thing that you use to attract people is oftentimes the thing that they're going to remember you for and follow you for. And so that's why, like, there's nothing inherently wrong about driving a Lamborghini or going off and having a ton of money and sitting in your passenger seat for some reason, right? But if that's the message that you're putting off and that's what people are following you for, then that's the type of person you're going to attract. So as soon as you switch that up and you don't have that anymore, they're not going to follow you, right? So like imagine if Tai Lopez stopped posting pictures of cars and girls and, things like that. Like, would his core audience whose life he's changed continue to follow him? Yes. But would the mass majority of people that follow him, would he still be Tai Lopez? No, like he wouldn't, because that's what they follow him for, Right. So it's really important to just understand, like, what are you using to attract people? And is that really your core message? Which is why you might see me in a Lamborghini, but you're never going to see me using Lamborghinis to, attract millions of followers. That's not my style.
Yeah, totally. Not mine either.
Right.
That's all good.
Because I don't think Lamborghinis change the world. They're awesome. No. They're fun, but they're not going to go make the world a better place.
Exactly. Right. Like, yeah,
right.
You can have a good time, and I'm all about having fun and a good time while you're working hard, for sure. But that's not going to, yeah. Well, shoot, dude, is there any last, like, one golden nugget that you want to drop? Like, I don't know, maybe.
Oh man, for sure. Let's. I know if you want to wrap it up here, let me drop a few gold bombs here. Do you want focus more on Instagram or focus more on Facebook or?
Ooh, general? You know what? Which one do you think is the better one at this time right now to be focusing on? Or both?
I'm gonna give you a quick recap of both. Instagram, depending upon how your audience uses it, right? Yeah. Instagram drives a lot of traffic, or can drive a lot of traffic. But there's less buyers on the Instagram platform. Now I'll get to that in just a second. It's much easier to grow on Instagram, and you need to cultivate and nurture your audience a lot on Instagram. It's hard to do that in an automated way. So Instagram is a very time-consuming platform, but it can be a very profitable which is one of the biggest problems. And actually the reason that I just got out of the Instagram agency space is because a lot of my clients, especially these bigger names, like, they expected an automated solution because that was what they're used to with, you can do that on Facebook because you can, place ads and do that content. You can't do that on Instagram, right? It's much, much more difficult. So from a standpoint of monetization, if you want to drive a flip ton of traffic and you don't want to have a personal brand and you don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, great. You can go to Instagram, you can post some viral, photos of entrepreneurship and that's great. If you want to actually cultivate an audience, if you want to be on the Instagram platform, you're going to need time. Right? Like, time is what goes into it now. That's evolving. Now on Facebook, on the other hand, buyers are on Facebook. The same person, and this was back early 2017, so it's probably different. Instagram's made a huge shift in 2018. But at one point, the same exact person on Instagram and on Facebook was 8 times more likely to buy on Facebook than it was on Instagram. So if they say an ad for the same thing on the two platforms, they're 8 times more likely to buy on Facebook. So now you go, okay, well, why the heck then would I even spend any of my time on Instagram? And it's because traffic on Instagram is like 10 times cheaper than it is on Facebook.
Right.
So for those of you that are in the paid advertising space or are in the space of, that marketing, what we will do is we will acquire the initial customer or the initial follower, I should say, on Instagram, and then we will drive them to Facebook as fast as we possibly can. So let's say you didn't want to grow like an Instagram page yourself, but you wanted to capitalize on traffic because it's cheap.
Right.
So I'll set up a page, and my only goal on that page is to get people to either opt in or really just hit the page. And here's why. Ideally, we'd like them to opt into our freebie. But I never, ever, 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 ever pay for an ad on Instagram where I'm selling something. It's always, I'm always giving it away for free. From shout outs from other influencers, unless I'm going to do like a super long-term deal with them. But if it's like I'm buying 10 shout outs from them, I'm sending them to a freebie offer. I'm putting a Facebook pixel on that page. And that Facebook pixel is specific for that Instagram audience. I'm going to go buy $3,000 in shout outs from an Instagram influencer. I'm going to get literally tens of thousands of visitors to visit that page because they're doing swipe ups and things like that. Like we were getting clicks for, I don't know. I think we were getting webinar registrants at one point for 83 cents. All right. A registrant. And we were getting, I think we got we paid $1,000 and we got like 2,000 or 3,000 impressions to the page that we did the shout out from. You picked the right influencers, not always, but now that Facebook pixel has fired thousands of times. So you got a lot of good data. And as long as the quality of the account that you're buying them from has good quality followers, that's why we typically buy story shout outs rather than post shout outs, right? So story shout outs with a swipe up, people are actually watching and engaged. Now I have an audience, Facebook pixeled, to go retarget on Facebook, and I can create lookalike audiences off of that. So I've acquired my 5,000 impressions for pennies on the dollar compared to what I would have paid for an initial 5,000 impressions on Facebook. And now I can just go retarget on there. And so from a paid advertising standpoint, that's a great strategy. From a organic, it is easier to grow fast on Instagram. It is easier to grow loyal on Facebook. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Yeah. Fast. Okay. More loyal on Facebook and just a following mainly on Instagram. That's really interesting.
Because like I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, your audience probably don't want to be like celebrity influencers. A majority of them.
Yeah, I'd say probably a majority of them. They're just looking to kind of grow. Probably, mainly just kind of grow a little bit of their. Let people know a little bit more of what they do. Not like
business, right? Exactly. Yeah. Number one tip I can give for you guys: if you don't have a Facebook group, you need to open one now. We just got an amazing testimonial back from Steven, actually, saying that outside of publishing, the Facebook group that we helped him create and grow is the single greatest thing that has driven his business forward. So when you understand that, like you need a Facebook group and you do it and for those of you that are watching on a podcast, you probably won't be able to visualize this, but if you're watching on the video, like imagine your social media as a circle. Your Facebook group needs to be at the center of it and everything needs to revolve around that because the Facebook group is the most interactive and intimate social media platform for two reasons. One, because, and I don't mean from like they get to know you because there's Instagram stories, which are great, but I mean it's going to bring you the highest level of ROI because you can do live streams in there. You can make posts in there, and 90% of the content in a Facebook group is not your content, but you get credit for it. Right. So if you have an engaged audience, they're publishing tons and tons of content. You're benefiting from that. And so what you want to do, if you focus on growing that, rather than when you're on podcasts, be like, check out my website or check out my YouTube channel or check out this or check out that. You just send everybody to the Facebook group. Podcasts, YouTube channels, Twitter, Instagram, email, Snapchat, wherever you're at. If you send everyone to the Facebook group, then they, number one, see that you're awesome because you got all these members in there. They're all interacting with each other. Number two, they actually consume your content. Like they will actually sit on. I have a Facebook group with we just purged about 5,000 members out of it. We have about 30,000 members in there now, right? I go in there, I go live. Yesterday I did a live, and in the first 4 hours, I got 1.7 thousand views, right? In the first hour, 2 hours, right? And so they watch, they consume, they interact, they engage. So if you do that, and this is, once again, coming down to exposure, all right? The single greatest thing that will drive your business forward without a question is interviews and live streaming, right? So when Steven talks about publishing on his podcast, I did that exact same thing, except I did it on Facebook Live. That's the only difference. And the reason I did it on Facebook Live is because, number one, I didn't really know about podcasting. When I first got started in entrepreneurship, I thought podcasts were for losers. Totally different mindset there, guys. Podcasts are amazing.
That's cool, man.
But I went and did it on Facebook because that was where my audience was. And so I would go, and if there was a Facebook group, I would go to the admin and I would say, hey, and like, listen, guys, like I started with one member, just like most of you will start too. All right. Like I'm nothing special, but you get your first 100 members, 200, 500. Once you got like that 1,000 member mark, you got leverage. And so you can go to these Facebook group owners and anybody else that has between 1 and 5,000 members, I hit them up. Or if you have a really good skill that a lot of people need, Facebook group owners love that. All right. So if you can teach something, let's say you're really good at, I don't know, SEO, you're really good at designing funnels, you're really good at anything, like any skill that could potentially be, go find Facebook groups of your ideal audience. And you might be like, well, why would they let me in there? I'm like, dude, it's your ideal audience. It's also their ideal audience. So the more value you can provide to them. And I sat on interview after interview after interview after interview after interview. And that's what blew me up. And then on top of that, I live streamed for like 170 something days straight. Every single day I did a live stream. And so all of a sudden I was getting tons of massive exposure and I was telling my skill set with a little bit of my story to each one of these places and like luring them in. And then they would come back and think about it. What's the first thing that you do when you see a live stream that somebody else is interviewing? You click on their profile.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to go, who the heck is this dude? Right. So you go click on the profile. You've got that whole entire profile optimized with a link to your group and a call to action and all that. And then you've got 176 days of nothing but live streams. They're going to go consume that content. And that is more of my story. That's more my storyline. So now I actually give them a reason on top of that 30-minute snippet. I give them a reason to come follow me.
Right.
And so this is true. Like if you're trying to grow a Facebook group or a Facebook audience of any sort, exposure is your best friend. And you get exposure through interviews and leveraging other people's audiences that already exist. You don't got to, I've grown 5 million followers. I've never spent a single penny on ads.
Dude, that's huge, man. All this is huge. Sorry, keep going.
No, you're good. But that's what you have to understand. Why do you follow someone? You follow someone because of their story.
His story. 100%.
Like that. You could be like, oh no, I follow so-and-so because they're really good at photography. No, you follow that person because they told a story that got you interested in their photography, because there are 10,000 photographers out there, but you follow that one, right? Why? Because of their story. So you've got to have your story in whatever it is that you teach. And on top of that, then you got to get exposure to that story. So go tell that story to tons and tons and tons and tons of people.
That's cool, dude.
The biggest thing and I'm going to end with this for you, and then I'll turn it back to you.
Go for it, dude. No.
People are like, well, Josh, there's only so many ways I can share my story. People eventually get bored of it. All I want to tell you to do is go look at Gary Vaynerchuk's Instagram page. Okay. And people be like, what? I'm like, dude, the guy says the same 5 things over and over and over and over again. Give value, give value, give value. 1, right? Hustle, 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 hustle. I want to buy the New York Jets. I want to like, it's literally the same 5 or 6 things said a different way. I value young kids. I value, it's the same thing, but you love him. Grant Cardone's the same way. Ty Lopez is the same thing. Russell's a little bit better about getting interesting, but in reality, it's really just the same stuff because people need to hear it different ways and people are fascinated by it. And so when you can go and you say it and you tell your story, I've told the webinar story 20,000 times. Well, maybe not. But like a lot of times. And I tell it, it's the same storyline, but I tell it a little bit differently based on the audience. So if I know that one audience is a little bit more beginner, I use more beginner terms. If I know they're a little bit more advanced, I use advanced terms. If I know that they're real estate agents, I'm going to tell things that are only pertinent to real estate agents, right? And so just tell your story over and over and over again. And remember, most people are only going to hear it once or twice. Most people are not actually consuming every piece of content you put out. And the ones that are, they're there regardless, right? They're not going to get sick of it. Like I listened to Russell. I watched his interview or his Salesforce vlog where he went to Salesforce. Only vlog, 12-minute vlog I have ever watched in its entirety. Why? I knew exactly what was going to happen, right? But I was fascinated. I was like, dude, this guy's going to Salesforce, his competitor. I want to know, right? He's probably going to tell that story 10,000 times, and I'm probably going to watch it 10,000 times. Why? It's something that I'm interested in, right? So tell your story. It's so important. And then go and like don't be put into this little box of like, oh, Facebook ads are the where it's at. Or you don't listen to me and go, well, Josh says to only do Instagram. No, like go get exposure, right? Like I didn't stop at Facebook groups. This is a funny story about how I got a lot of exposure and people don't think it's possible. A lot of people don't believe me when I tell this. I got interviewed twice on Grant Cardone's show.
I've seen it.
Grant Cardone promoted our Instagram course during the first 10X Growth on his website.
Wow.
Okay. You know how that came about? We did not pay for those interviews. That's how I did it. I literally added Grant Cardone on Snapchat and I sent him a message, and every day for like a week, actually it's probably like longer than that, I sent a period to bump my Snapchat message to the top of his feed. All right. Cause I'm like, dude, if I can get in front of this guy, like major exposure. And guess what? He replied. And my message was something super simple. It was like, hey, Grant, I know that you are looking for an Instagram person, right? Because I did my market research, right, on something that I needed it. Got to know that. And I went and I was like, I know you need an Instagram person. My business partner and I are really good. We got proven course, done X number of followers or whatever. Would love to help you out in any way that's possible. His message back to me was so short and simple. It was, this is awesome. Would love to have you. Call this number. And he gave them a number. I had no idea who I was calling, right? Didn't give me a name, nothing. And it ended up being Robert Sislow, which is director of video marketing. And so now I've got Robert's number. And, we got passes to the 10X Growth Con the first year. We didn't I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this. We didn't end up paying, like we got down there and we're like, this is awesome. Got to meet Grant, all that. Because I sent him a message on Snapchat. Why? Because I was looking for exposure.
Yeah.
Right? So that people go in and asking for so much stuff.
Man.
Dude, just little things.
Dude, I think that's the biggest like false belief mindset that people have is like, oh, I can never get big enough people to interview, or they'll never want me to like interview them, or they'll never actually let me do it. You know what I mean? Like, dude, nowadays is so freaking easy to get. It's easy to get into somebody's circle.
It really is. The only thing you have to figure out is
show up.
What's the big pain point for them, right?
Yeah.
I can't offer Grant Cardone exposure, right? Or at least at the time I couldn't. Maybe I could a little bit now, but I couldn't do it. But I found the one thing that I just listened, and I'd been following this guy for years, right? Or for probably a year and a half at this point, right?
Right.
Because I was following him. He was actually probably my first start in entrepreneurship because I was in sales.
That's sweet.
And
he's the man too, by the way, for sales.
For sales, yeah. I mean, he's one heck of a guy. Let me tell you. But so you find that one thing, and if it's not in your wheelhouse, like figure out a way to make it in your wheelhouse. Or, for example, there was a guy by the name of Jason Stone, who I don't know, I want to call him friends. We have each other, we talk. We used to be more friends when I was more in the Instagram game. Big time Instagram influencer. So when I first started out, back when I had like 100,000 followers, this guy probably had like 3 million, right?
Wow.
Between his accounts, his biggest one was probably like 1.5 million. So I'm reaching out to this guy, and there's nothing that I can offer him about Instagram, which is the only little thing that I know. So I'm like, how do I go and how do I get ahead? And so I literally would just watch every one of his stories, every one of his live streams, looking for that thing. And I'm like, what is it that he needs? What is it that he needs? And then I found out that he said one day, he's like, right now we are, I'm thinking about getting into YouTube and kind of want to do this stuff. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. So I went to Josue, who was my business partner at the time. And I was like, dude, you know YouTube, right? And he's like, yeah, we know some stuff. I was like, who do we know that like we could connect with Jason? And so we found, I don't even know who it was. But there was some video editor guy that had like a bunch of experience with YouTube, Tim, somebody, I think. Anyway, so we reach out to Jason and we're like, send him an email. And we're like, dude, Jason, big fan, blah, 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 talking about it, making him feel good. And then we're like, hey, saw on your, whatever it was that you're getting YouTube. Would love to connect you to our buddy over here that does this. Sure, he would hook you up with a sweet deal as a referral, blah, blah, blah. Would that be interested to you? And so he messaged, he emails back, whatever, and we kind of go back and forth. And that's how we struck up our friendship and got to know him. And then at the event, he sees us and he's on stage. And so he comes off. He's like, what's up, guys? We got, pictures with him. And that's how we got into a circle. And now we get, get deals when we do that. It's little things, dude. Like, you guys that are listening, it's little things.
Yeah. And you weren't, it's not like you were huge or a big influencer.
Heck no.
Time,
I was a nobody.
Right?
I was a nobody at that time.
Dude, that is so sick.
And I would say this though, and I want to say that with caution. I would super not recommend reaching out to Grant Cardone if you have no results or no experience at all. Like,
don't waste this time.
Right. Yeah. But like Dana Derrick talks about the Dream 100 strategy, and and that's basically what this is, more or less. I'm a big fan of the Dream 100 strategy. Yeah. I am not a big fan of it as an actual business model because I don't think that it's not consistent. Like, you don't drive consistent traffic that way. And so if you're looking, like, if you're trying to build a balanced business where you can know numbers, dollar in, dollar out, I don't recommend this. But I recommend it in addition to that because it can bring additional massive amounts of exposure. So, and that's just for me, and take that advice more or less as you will. But when you're at the beginning, reach out to a person that you can directly affect that has an ideal audience in your area. So I made friends with Arnie Giske early on. He wasn't that big. It paid off well. But also early on, I made friends with Jason Stone. I could offer him nothing. Like, I had like, whatever it was, 20, 30,000 followers on Instagram. Virtually nothing, right? I had no experience compared to what it was. So I found that thing. Don't start by going, I'm going to Dream 100 Gary Vaynerchuk. You got nothing to offer that guy, dude. Like, I'm sorry. Like, cool. But like, start with someone, and then as you work your way up, go bigger and bigger and bigger. And then every now and then, once you like kind of have a feel for what you're doing, take a shot, right? I took a shot on Grant Cardone. Did not expect it to pay off. It did.
Yeah, totally.
Changed my business, right? Moved it forward in a direction, jump-started a lot of things. Got a lot of exposure from that. Yeah, but I didn't depend upon that for my whole business model. I didn't go like, we're with Grant Cardone, let's take out loans and go this and do this and all. Yeah. No, like I used it to drive my business forward and move it forward. And now Grant Cardone knows who I am, and so does Robert and all that. I've been on his show, and
Dude, that is so sick. Well, dude, I want to say thank you so much for being on here and dropping as many gold nuggets as you did.
Yeah.
I know my listeners are going to get a ton out of this, and anybody who watches it in the future, even just like, this is huge, man. And this is stuff that's going to stick around for a long time too. Like, the stuff that you shared wasn't just like, oh, this is what's happening this week. No, it's stuff that's going to be sticking around for a while. Sure, it changes, but the principles are all there,
Well, and on that note, I think it's really good to remember, when a new platform comes out. So like when I started on Instagram, there's a lot of hacks, right? There's tons of tricks to get ahead. As any platform develops, and you look at the big platforms right now, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, like those are your three big pillars. Yeah. When you understand that, like, they all function the same way, more or less. All right. Yeah. They all function off of none of those three platforms produce their own content. Okay. Mm-hmm. All of them are driven by users, meaning the longer the user stays on the platform, the more money that they make. Right. And the thing that brings or that keeps people on platform is good content. All right.
Yep.
Instagram is not your enemy. People are always like, oh, the algorithm. I'm like, no, the algorithm actually would work amazingly in your favor if you actually put out good content. All right. So understand that if a new platform emerges and evolves, yes, there's going to be hacks and tricks to get majorly ahead and to capitalize upon that. But there's also a lot of risk, and there's also a lot of confusion on that. I have no idea why I'm holding this card. But there's a lot of confusion. However, a lot of the social media strategies that we talk about here aren't like, it has very little to do with the platform. Like, yeah, the basic stuff, I don't want to waste your guys' time on like, make sure your profile's optimized. Like that, some of the stuff is common sense, guys, right? Yeah. Like, use your mind and think of, hey, I'm doing my business online. I should probably look like a business owner, right? There are certain just logical things that you should do. But above and beyond the logical things, it really is like 3 or 4 core principles, whether it's in marketing or whether it's in this. And I love like the 80-20 rule, right? The further along I get in business, the more I realize that's applicable. 20% of the stuff drives 80% of the effect, right? And 80% of the stuff that you do is basically worthless, right? And when you double down on that 20%, I just hired an assistant not too long ago, like actual full-time. And I pay her, 40 hours a week, like the whole 9 yards, like I'm a legit company now. Yeah. Letting go of like, and outsourcing that little stuff I was like, my business is going to fall apart. Like, there's no way I could possibly outsource posting on Instagram. I could never teach someone my skills of being able to do it. It's not true, and it's a lot of that is just so false. And the same thing is true in social media. 80% of the stuff that you guys are worrying about, like, oh my gosh, my live stream got cut off 30 minutes in and I wasn't able to wrap up. It is not going to change your business.
No.
Right? Like, it's just not, stop worrying about that stuff. People are not going to unfollow you because one live stream of yours got cut out, or because, you accidentally dropped your phone, or you accidentally made a slip up. You know what I mean? Like,
that just makes you look normal. Like, it happens. I think it's actually good at certain points or different times.
Yeah. And I think that there's a balance between being real and being professional.
Yeah.
Social media is typically that place to be a little bit more real. As soon as you click off of social media and you enter that funnel and you enter that webinar or you enter that sales call or whatever it is, you need to be very professional, right? Now you're running a business. Social media, to relate, you can get away. Like, people see me all the time and they're like, oh, Josh, you get on live streams or whatever with, in your shorts and you're this and that. And you're like, you're just so real and authentic. I'm like, yes, but if you talk to me in person, you do what you say you're going to do. You don't mess up and you follow through. Like, if I'm paying you money, you do your job. And if you're paying me money, I am going to do mine. I don't go, oh, it's okay. No, like, we're running a business here, right? Yeah. Social media, and this is where I think a lot of people get it wrong. Social media is just a marketing tool when you're using it for that, right? And so, like, people are like, oh no, it's my lifestyle, or I want to be all truly authentic in this. I'm like, if that's how you run your business, you're probably not going to get very far. So use social media as the tool that it's designed, and don't become obsessed with it like I did at the beginning. I mean, but like, don't make social media your reality, because once you make social media your reality, a lot of your life falls apart. And I've seen it happen to a lot of people. It's happened to me in certain areas. So be careful with it, but it's very, very powerful.
Wow. Well, thanks again so much, Josh. Yeah, I'm going to wrap this up and just say,
that's long.
This was freaking awesome. This is a little bit longer of an interview. Thank you so much for taking your time and spending it with everybody that's going to listen to this and the followers. Everybody.
For sure, man.
Thanks a ton. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Are you looking to jumpstart your business by learning or getting help from the real experts? Go to learningfromtheexperts.com to find pre-approved experts that I've handpicked for you. Please don't forget to let me know how I'm doing by subscribing, rating, and leaving feedback.